You mentioned how the U.S. economy is tied to war policy, and right now gas prices are skyrocketing. And I think there are a lot of there's always a lot of questions about what makes gas prices go up. And also there was an exchange between Jen Psaki and Peter Doocy recently that went viral, and it was over whether or not the oil companies have the authorization they need to drill. Let's take a look at that.
The largest producers with a strong domestic oil and gas industry. We have actually produced more oil. It is at record numbers, and we will continue to produce more oil. There are 9,000 approved drilling permits that are not being used. So the suggestion that we are not allowing companies to drill is inaccurate. The suggestion that that is what is hindering or preventing gas prices to come down is inaccurate.
Would President Biden rescind his executive order that halts new oil and natural gas leases on public lands?
Well, 90% of them happen on private lands, as I'm sure you know, and there are 9,000 unused approved drilling permits. So I would suggest you ask the oil companies why they're not using those if there's a desire to drill more.
So if she's wrong, that's kind of an annoying, smug attitude, but if she's right, then she's right. So can you enlighten us a little bit on this permit issue?
Well, first of all, we need to understand that just because you drill oil, pump oil, doesn't mean you produce gasoline. Of the majority of the oil that's brought out of the ground is not conducive to being refined into gasoline. Oil is used for a whole bunch of other products, our plastics industries, just about everything, uses some form of oil. Gasoline is just a small part of this. American refineries were for many years, and these are all the Gulf Coast refineries, keyed to Venezuelan oil. Venezuela produces a particular kind of crude that our refineries have been optimized to work with. Now, we sanctioned Venezuelan oil, and people are probably saying, why are we buying Russian oil? Because the Russians happen to produce in one of their oil fields a crude that is virtually identical to what Venezuela produced. So when we shut down Venezuela giving us oil to make gasoline for our cars, we replaced it with the Russian stuff. Now, like any industry, gasoline is a commodity that we operate under razor's thin margins of efficiency, meaning that we got to have gasoline coming to the pump, being consumed, and then replaced. We don't like to stockpile gasoline up over here because of price fluctuations, et cetera. We got to keep the flow going. So as long as Russian gas was coming out, Russian oil was coming out, and then it could get to the refineries would plan out how much to turn into gasoline, get that out to the economy, et cetera. And other places do, but our refineries are geared to that Russian oil. Everything works fine. Now we've cut off. Well, I don't know. I just saw the other day that the Russians are still sending tankers of that oil because we have no choice. We have no choice. If you stop the Russian oil, we stop producing gasoline because our refineries you can't just plug in any oil. That's why we sent James Story and a delegation to Venezuela to meet with the non-president of Venezuela, that Nicolas Maduro guy who's falsely occupying Juan Guaido's presidential palace. And then we go to Guaido and ask for Venezuela to increase oil. He's not the president. The president's a guy named Nicolas Maduro. And we went down there and said, could you please sell us oil? Because if we're going to cut the Russians off, we got to have oil that can go into our refineries or spend the billions of dollars necessary to retune our refineries, retune the whole system. And that takes time. And we don't have time because we operate on razor thin margins of efficiency. We don't have a reserve to fall in. Everybody says, well, what about that big oil reserve? That's oil. That's not gasoline. It's not refined gasoline product. It's oil that comes out and is used to produce plastics and other products, but it's not coming down and being refined into gasoline. That stuff comes from specific sources that we're now locked out of. This is why gas prices are going to go through the roof.
Going to go through the roof, as if they aren't already. You think they're just going to keep going up, up, up? It's going to become something.
If Russia, Russia right now so far has done nothing that it could do. It's letting the sanctions consume. It's already in France, for instance, Michelin, the big tire maker, they had to shut down. They can't produce anymore because the costs are too high. Wait till Americans see, diesel's through the roof right now. It's going to go even higher. Imagine what that does, to transportation does to the cost of all the goods that we have to bring to market so that we can live our nice, fat, happy lifestyle where I can just get in my car, drive to a supermarket, and everything's brought to me. Well, everything's brought to me on a truck. That truck uses diesel. That diesel's costing the trucker a fortune. So they're going to have to jack the prices up. And so my paycheck's not getting any bigger. So I'm going to lose all that money. Our economy is going to shut down, slow down. The European economy is in the process of shutting down, and Russia hasn't done a damn thing. They've just let the lunacy of this sanction policy eat itself. But when Russia decides that it's time to play hardball, and they're getting close, then this whole thing's over. It's all over. When Russia hits the switch on the gas pipelines, there is no gas for Europe. Biden lied through his teeth. We are working on alternative. No, any expert knew you didn't have it. Now that they've done it, all the experts suddenly woke up and went, oh, wait a minute, there's not enough liquid natural gas to replace this. And you want to know the greatest ironies of this? Liquid natural gas prices have gone through the roof too. China, gotta love the Chinese. The China bought a lot of American gas. We were selling the Chinese a lot of liquid natural gas. And so China now bought the American gas at, I don't know, $500, $600 per whatever unit of sale it is. They're selling it to Europeans now at $3,000 per unit. They're just making money hand over fist. And, the Europeans have to pay this price because they have no choice. But even so, it's not enough gas. They're only getting gas on the margins. If the Russians shut that switch, if they shut down Nord Stream 1, if they shut down Turk Stream, if they shut down the gas pipeline going through Belarus, if they shut down the gas pipeline going through Ukraine, they've still shipped money, the gas through Ukraine. And here's the ultimate irony. They're still paying the Ukrainians the transit fee. So Russia's invaded Ukraine. They're still depositing money because it's a contractual obligation into Ukrainian accounts for the transit fees. Russia's shipping this stuff because they're making money. So they'll make as much money as they can in the short term. But at some point in time, Putin has said, you guys want a divorce? I'll give you a divorce. And when he does, Europe literally shuts down. Literally, it will come to an absolute standstill. And the United, and then that has.
Yeah, well, it doesn't sound like the United States is in much better shape, though, from what you're saying. Because, if the prices they're already sky high and you're saying they're going to keep going up, it sounds to me like we may have a drastic change in our lifestyle also.
Well, we are. It won't be as bad as Europe, but it's the American people have to understand that, all these Russophobes out there, I hate Russia, I hate Russia. No, you don't. You don't know what you hate. You hate because you've been told to hate. You hate because you're ignorant and there's fear that comes from the ignorance and somebody has given you a target for you to focus your fear on. But, Russia has been, everybody talks about America's great economic strength. Russia's been using its capabilities to make that happen. Food. Russia said, we're not selling wheat anymore. But what happens when you take 20, 25, 30% of the world's wheat supply off the market? Who's going to replace it? No one. What's going to happen to food supplies? They're going to collapse. Wow. Now America might be able to survive because we have, we have, wheat farmers that, we can grow our own wheat, but the rest of the world is going to be in a problem. And that's going to put pressure on us because we say we want to hurt the Russians. We're hurting the rest of the world. Everybody who has one of these fancy little things, phone, and I got to get going because that's my 4:30. But I'll leave you with this. Those phones aren't going to be produced anymore because all the raw materials that go into making the microchips come from Russia. And Russia ain't going to sell it to us anymore.
Well, I know you got to go, but can you leave us with a glimmer of hope? Because you've painted a very bleak picture, and if that's the truth, fine. I don't want you to sugarcoat it. But if you were the president, or you could give advice to the Biden administration, is there anything that could or should be done to ease the oil situation?
Lift the sanctions on Russia. These are stupid sanctions. Russia's invaded. Russia's going to win. If I were the president of the United States right now, I'd pick up the phone to Zelensky and say, surrender. Surrender. Russia made a decision. They moved in. There's nothing anybody can do about that. What we have to do right now is mitigate the damage that's been done. We have to find a way to contain Russia's anger. But yeah, you're done. You're finished. Your days are over. We can't support you anymore. And then I turn to the Western partners and say, before we let Russia walk off to the to the sunset, let's try and bring them back in. Let's see if we can enter negotiations with Russia over a new European security framework that retains NATO as an institution, but withdraws NATO infrastructure back to 1997 lines, which is what Russia wanted, in exchange for, a sort of demilitarized zone. We can come up with a new conventional forces in Europe treaty, a new INF treaty, arms control structures, etc. In exchange for Russia sitting down and talking to us, we'll lift the sanctions and bring them back into the Western economy so that the economy can function as it's intended to do so. If this happens, we can reverse course.